Namaste, this is Aditya and welcome to Shankam Arctic channel. From past few weeks, I was very busy and I was unable to record any video for you. My sincere apologies for that. In my previous video, I have discussed about the options we have in using AEM in the headless scenario, and I also discussed my point of view on that. And I told, in my view, the best way to use AEM as headless is by using the servlets. So in this video, I'm going to show you how we can export the component data using AEM servlets. Let's get started with the presentation. In my previous videos, I have explained as to what is the basic structure of the servlet, and once we write the servlet, how to trigger the servlet from the postman. So that's what we have discussed in our previous videos. And I've also explained the options we have in using AEM in headless way, and I've also explained my point of view on that. In this video, we are going to see how exactly we can use the servlet to export the component data as JSON so that we can use AEM in a headless way. As per my analysis and experience, this is the best way to use AEM in a headless scenario. So let's understand how this works. Again, in my previous videos, we have created this article list component, okay, and I have added it onto this page. So let us suppose we want to export this data, whatever we are seeing, like here the title and description. If we want to, let us suppose, export this data so that an external mobile app can use it, and maybe mobile app is being developed in Android and iOS, let us suppose, and they want to use this data which is authored as part of this page. Then how do we do it? So that's the scenario which we are going to see now. So just to remind ourselves as to how this component is built, if we open this dialog box of this component, there is something called as article root path, wherein we give the root path of the article page. Then if we go to that root path, article page root path, then all the articles are listed here. Okay, each article is an individual page here. Okay, and then if we go into the properties of, if we just select one of the page and go to the properties, then inside that we have something called as title and description. So this title and description is what is being displayed in this list here. And in the explore button, what we give is the link to this page path, like what is this article page, that link will be there in the explore button. Okay, so this is what we have developed as part of our previous videos. This component we have developed. So let us suppose now this component we want to export it as a JSON. Then how do we do it? If we see the component code, right, so what we have done here, let's try to understand that too. Okay, so here we have used @inject, wherein we are getting the article root path. Then in the init method, okay, so once the injection is done, this post construct method will be called, and we are in init right now. Okay, so then here what we have done is we have just got the resource resolver. This resource resolver is like a database connection. Then what we have done is we are searching for every page under this root path. Okay, and that result will come into this search results dot get hits. Okay, so this will contain the list of all the pages under this root path, and then we are looping through each of these list, and then we are getting the title and the description and path, and we are setting it into a bean. Okay, so this bean is what is being sent to the UI, and that UI is rendering it like this. So we are setting all these values into the bean, and ultimately it is being added to the list of these beans. So if you just see this, right, so this is list of this article list data bean. Okay, so it's just a list or an array which is of this type of this bean. Okay, so ultimately we are setting it all those things here, and then we are putting a getter for that. Okay, so now if you see the HTML code of it, okay, so here we are just using this model, and then using that model we are getting the article list data bean array which we have set here, right? This array we are getting it, and then we are just using the title. Like if we go to this bean, right, we have the path, the title and description. So we are just in the HTML code, so we just got that list, and we are just looping through the each item. which is of the data type of a bean. So we are just doing that bean.title description, and we are just rendering this component. So all this we have discussed in detail in our previous videos. If you haven't watched those, I will leave the link in the description box. You can go and watch it out. Okay, just I have given the overview or a recap as to what we have done in our previous videos. So now having done all this, now we want to export all this data, whatever we are seeing here, into a JSON. So let's see how to do that. Okay, so the first thing what we need to do is we need to go to the servlet. Okay, so let me change the endpoint of the servlet. Okay, so I'll call it maybe get article list servlet. Okay, and then here let's start our code. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the resource resolver. Okay, every time we have to write a code to get a resource, then we need the resource resolver. Without resource resolver we cannot do anything, because resource resolver is like a database connection which we establish. Okay, so how to get the resource resolver? We can always get it through the request object. Okay, in the servlet we have this request object. So this request object is being injected by the OSGA framework. Okay, so first whenever the request comes in the browser, a URL comes, right? So whenever that comes, it goes to the OSGA framework, and OSGA framework will the out of the box servlet request object, whatever is there, it will wrap it into this link HTTP request object. That is the job of the OSGA framework, and it will inject that request object into the servlet. Okay, all this is taken care by the framework. So since OSGA framework is already up and running, it has already started. So what happens is it already has established a database connection with CRXDE. So when it has to establish the database connection, it means that it also has a resource resolver, because any connection to the database or CRXDE is established through resource resolver. So what you can always do is, using this request object, you can get the resource resolver which OSGA framework already contains in its memory. There is certain object with which OSGA is connecting to the database. So the same resource resolver object, we are getting it here. Okay, so that's what we are doing here. So then what happens is we need to hard code this path. Okay, for now what we'll do, we will hard code this path. Okay, in real time scenario we will not hard code like this. We'll have to go to the page and find out this component, basically identify this component. So identification of this component, how we are doing that, it depends upon the headless architecture which we are choosing. The details of it which we'll take up in a next video. Okay, for now let us suppose we are hard coding this path. Okay, so this is how I will hard code it. I'll say private static final string page path, or I'll say resource path. And I'll just paste this resource path here. So this is how I'm hard coding the path for now. Okay, and let us suppose, since I have the path right now, so what I can do is I can use this resource resolver and get the resource. Okay, so as I told, resource resolver is nothing but a database connection, right? So using that database connection, I will get the resource object. Okay, so what is the resource under this path? So that is what I am trying to get now. Okay, I'll say resource resolver dot get resource, and I'll just give the resource path. So this will give me the resource object which is residing under this path. So that resource is under this resource object. Now what I'll do is, I already have this model ready, article list model, right? So all we need to do now is I will just instantiate an object with that article list model. Article list model equal to, then what I'll do, I'll just use this resource and I will adapt this resource into this model like this. So now what has happened? What has happened now is, using this resource object, I am just adapting it to this model. So what does that mean? So what does that means is, what is the Sling framework doing to load this component when we are loading this page? So whenever we are loading this page, it identifies this resource, right? And it will somehow try to call the model and render it. So how does that flow work? So first the page is loaded, then the component code is being identified. So first the page loads, then what it does, it goes into this page and it will see what all components are available as part of this page. It will identify this article list component is available. Then it will go to this link resource type. So it will find the code for this link resource type now. So it will go into the apps and it will go for this article list component. Here it will find the HTML code. So it opens this HTML code, and then it will identify that this HTML code is dependent on this model. So then it opens the model code and it goes to the model and it will inject all the values here, and it will also call this init method. So all this flow will also get executed just by calling this simple line, which is resource.adapt to. So whatever flow I have explained, that it will go to the HTML, it will identify the beans, it will go to the HTML, it will identify the model, and it will call this init function. All that will happen just by asking that resource to be adapted to this model. So whenever it runs that code, this init method also gets executed, and all this code also will get executed, and finally this beans also will get executed. So then what happens, we will be able to get this beans because this getter is there. So we can use this model to get this beans. So how can we do that? All we need to do is, here we have the model variable. So now all I need to do is, I just need to instantiate a list which is of type this one. So if I go back to my model, so this is what I am trying to instantiate, right? This is the beans I want now. So I can just get this one, okay, and I will say article data list bean equal to, and then I will use the article list data model dot get article list data bean. Okay, so now what I did, using this model, I have just called this getter. Okay, so I just call this getter so that I get this variable. So this variable is already populated now. How it was populated? Because of this adapted to. Okay, so there is a resource, it goes to adapted to. So the resource path we have hard coded, right? So it will go to this resource. Okay, so resource path I have hard coded. Here it will see in the dialog box, if you see the properties here, article root path property is there, right? So it will go to the model and then it will inject this article root path to this root path. Okay, and it will call the init function. It executes all this code, and here it has populated that variable, and after populating that variable, we are using this getter method to get the beans. So that is what we have done. So now what we'll do is, this beans whatever is there, if you just open this one, this is the beans, right? So these beans whatever is there, this is what we are trying to export as a JSON. So this path, the title and description is what we want to export as a JSON. And to do that, we have some library called fastXML. So we are going to use that fastXML now. So for that, we'll have to copy paste certain imports first. I will show you what are those. So these are the two imports which are needed. So using these two fastXML imports, object mapper and object writer, we'll be able to convert any Java beans into a JSON format. Okay, so let me copy paste the code for that also now. Okay, so this will be the code to actually convert the bean into JSON. Okay, so first we'll get the object mapper, right, and all this syntax, and using this object writer, we will have to call this write value as string and pass the Java bean into this method, which will ultimately convert this Java bean into JSON. Okay, but what are we passing here? We are passing the list of beans, right? So this list will be converted into an array, and beans will be converted into a JSON, which will be an array of JSONs. Okay, we'll see the how the final output comes when we actually trigger it from the postman. Okay, so now what we need to do is we just have to write the response into the response now. So for that, what I'll do is I'll say response dot get writer dot write, and I'll say JSON. Okay, so because this is the JSON response which I wanted to write ultimately into the response. So this is the response I wanted to send, basically the JSON response. And before writing the response, we can also set the content type of the response. Okay, we can call the set content type function, and we can set the type as application JSON. This will just indicate that the response type is a JSON format and not any other format, plain text or any other format. So without this, some of the mobile applications will fail. If the response type is not JSON, some of the code might fail. So we just add this also. Okay, so now let's test this code after compiling it. Okay, so let me go into here and just compile the code. And let's see once it is compiled how it works. Okay, so now the compilation is done. Okay, so what we do is now go to the postman and we'll have to hit the URL. So how to create this URL I have already explained in my previous video, but let me explain it once again here. So en dot, and then we have used the selector. Okay, so this is our selector. So this is get article list. So that selector we need to use, and then what is the extension? That's what we need to use. So we can use any page here, but I have selected the en page just like that. Okay, any page you can use and hit it, and this code will get triggered. So this code is being triggered based on the selector and but not on based on the page. Okay, so now let me hit this send button. Okay, so now if you see, we got this unauthorized message. This is because we have just created the URL and hit it, so we haven't authenticated it. So what we need to do is we need to go into this authorization, and we'll have to create a basic authorization. And in this basic auth, we'll give admin and admin, which is our user ID and password to open the AEM, right? So that user ID and password we'll give, and then we will hit it. Okay, so you can see that we got the 400 invalid recursion selector and all this error. So this we got it because we have used the method as get. Okay, so now if you see the status, right, that is 400 bad request. Okay, so now let's change this method to post and then hit it. So now you can see the response, we have got it. So now let's put this response into the JSON formatter and analyze what we have got. Okay, so we'll go to JSON formatter online and just paste this JSON response which we have got, and we'll click on the process. So this is the response we have got. Okay, we have got an array of JSONs. As I've already told, if we see our code here, so what have we exported, right? We have converted this list of beans into a JSON. This is an array, right? So that is why you are seeing first an array here. So as I told, beans will get converted into JSON. Okay, so this is how it is looking like. So if you open this JSON and see, you have path, title and description. So each of these variable is a key here, and its value comes as a value here. So all these variable and its value will get converted as a key value pair like this. So what you have got is 3 articles data. Okay, so if you see here in our UI, we have 3 articles, and in the export also we have 3 articles: flower garden, rice plantation and family picnic. So this is how you export the component data into a JSON. The advantage with this export is you need not write again all the code what we have done in the model, right, to go to that particular route path, query upon all the pages, and then set it into bean. All this you need not do redo again. So you just get the resource and adapt it to the model, and automatically you will get the response, and you just send that response in the JSON. So if the model is changing at the later on stage, like if some new parameters are added, or let us suppose if the getter logic is changed, any code changes which are happening in the UI here will automatically reflect because you are just adapting the model and getting the response. So this is what I wanted to cover in this video. More about the servlets, let's see in our next videos. Jai Hind.